your sex, your race, means that you have something more profound in common, for example, than with people who share more differentiated elements of your character, your ambition, your values, more importantly.
Yes, and I'll tell you, in Lebanon, they have quotas based on religion. I get obsessed with religion. To be a president, you have to be Christian, Maronite, to be prime minister, Sunni Muslim, etc., etc. So I cannot be a president there and not write a specific part of whatever, not prime minister, you know. So all this is that people of Lebanon right now are saying no to sectarianism. They know it didn't work. It was unfair. They don't want it. Whereas here, we are trying to bring that to us here. There is a reason why all our collective agreements protect merit, right? And merit, and you said merit-based hiring and all that. I do believe personally that it is insulting for me to tell me that I'm going to get a job because I am Lebanese or I am this or that.
Well, it's particularly insulting if you're qualified.
Absolutely. So it is particularly insulting if I'm qualified, definitely. And so to come to tell me that, let's say, if we're going to talk about one part of the identity, you mentioned gender, but it could be, let's say, skin color, right? So what does someone from Palestine who happens to have a black skin have in common with the president of the United States, a former president who happens to have do they have in common, like, or someone from Haiti driving a cab in Montreal? Like, you know, there's culture, there's language.
Well, look, as social scientists, we could agree that one of the factors that might give people some similarity of experience would be race or ethnicity, right? I mean, but it's one factor among many.
Yes.
And if I was writing today about what predicts success in complex Western organizations, okay, so what predicts success if you look at it psychometrically? So you break down all the attributes of people and you decide which measurable attribute would be associated with socioeconomic position, let's say. Well, the best two predictors are general cognitive ability, which is basically ability to learn and to deal with complex abstractions, and that predicts performance in high complexity jobs, and high complexity jobs involve a lot of change and necessity for learning. So ability to learn and ability to solve complex problems predicts success in jobs that require the ability to learn and the ability to deal with complex situations, and that's measurable. SATs measure that, GREs measure that, the LSATs measure that, and they don't measure it perfectly, but they measure it better than anything else we know. And the other thing that predicts universally, in some sense, across job categories is conscientiousness, and that's hard work, essentially, industriousness, orderliness, but industriousness predicts better. So amount of hours put in, the ability to formulate, ability and willingness to formulate and maintain social contracts. So there's honesty and integrity associated with that. So the research literature indicates that the best predictors of success are ability to learn and conscientiousness. It's like, well, come up with a better definition of merit than that if you dare, because you can't. Now, openness to experience, which is a creativity trait, predicts entrepreneurial ability and creative ability, and extroversion predicts sales ability, and agreeableness predicts, say, nursing and the capacity to take care of people. There are other personality attributes that are relevant, but those are the main ones. So how is that not just dead set evidence for the existence of as functional a meritocracy as we've been able to manage, right? I mean, it's distorted by power claims, it's distorted by deception and bad hiring practices and nepotism and all the things, but that's not central or core to the system. I don't know any reasonably well-functioning organization in the West where that isn't the case. Businesses as well bend over backwards to be more than fair in their hiring practices. And, you know, they want competent people, and you can define competence and you can define and measure merit.
Of course.
And like, I think what's at the basis of all of this radical critique is an assault on the idea of merit itself. And I can understand that, you know, because talents are unfairly distributed.
And in the end, it will lower the standards in the society.
Well, that's the thing. You know, if you look at this, maybe you're cold-hearted and you look at this purely from, and imagine you even manifested a critique from the left. You really think that corporations aren't concerned enough about their own survival to do everything they possibly can to select the most competent people? Obviously, they're going to do that, and it's actually of benefit to everyone else. Because what's the alternative? Random selection? If you're put in a position that you're not qualified for, you're going to fail. That is not very positive for you. It's no mercy to put someone somewhere where they're going to fail.
Absolutely.
That's not helpful. We see all these selection processes now being subject to critique. Universities are abandoning standardized tests. They don't know the literature, the people who are doing this. They're going to replace them with selection mechanisms that are far more pathological. I was talking with one of my colleagues, for example. So among the universities that abandoned the GRE, the graduate record exam for graduate student entrance, what happened was that those students who came from elite universities had a much higher probability of being accepted than they did when the GRE was part of the package. Because the GRE actually equalized across universities. So you throw it out, and what happens is those who had the fortune to go to a prestigious university have a much bigger advantage. That's exactly what's going to happen when we throw out valid measures of competence.
I agree with you on that, and we'll have a sort of hyperinflation of grades, like with currency. We'll get to that maybe. Like what happened in Lebanon, hyperinflation. Here we may get inflation at one point, I guess. But for the grades as well, I understand the reflex of some to say, oh, it's the pandemic to help, but thinking that it would help. My point was during war in Lebanon, twice I had to do 2 years in one. So we'd have 7 chapters of math at once, 5 of physics to catch up, like 2 years in one. Never, ever they did what we are doing here, like removing the grades, doing some, it remained thorough. 15 years of civil war. And so that was my experience. But of course, it's a decision, a group decision, and all that. I'm not talking, but I'm saying that what I think about that, I agree.
So now you're in limbo. Like, what faces you now? What's in the future for you? Is it a tribunal? Like, how are you going to be tried for your crimes?
The arbitration. So the arbitration process, and whatever other processes. So I can't answer that because right now I don't know. It's developing fast, So
you don't know the process by which this is going to be remediated.
Oh, I know, of course, the arbitration,
right. But so what does that mean, practically speaking? What do you have to do, and what's going to happen to you?
We will see. But I know that